This is Amy Zewe for the Friday Red Alert Report for July 29th. Strange alliances. Last week I talked about grand alliances. This week I want to recognize some strange ones. What does the BDS movement and the Students for Justice in Palestine movement have in common with Black Lives Matter? It seems that any endeavor in America to protest a domestic issue, the BDS movement activists seem to have to get in on and hijack for their own purpose and make everything in the world, perceived, imagined, or real, seems to be the fault of the Jewish people and the state of Israel. The Black Lives Matter movement in America is one of controversial nature, and I don't really want to get into it other than the fact that they are protesting and questioning the relationship between police officers and community members based on the amount of shootings that result in the loss of life of young black men. Some representatives have defined it as a genocide against young black men in America. Well, the CDC has reported that in the last 14 years, police shootings overall are down, and that the number of black men shot just in the year 2012 was about 120. These shootings may or may not have been justified. I have not reviewed each one. But at the very least, they were criminal. At the very best, they may have been justified. Either way, this does not form the level of genocide that the Armenians or the Jewish people or the Yazidis are facing at the hands of oppressors. So using that term is simply incorrect. The commonality between the Black Lives Matter movement and activists in the BDS movement is to make bombastic statements, use inflammatory terms, and lay the blame for certain instances upon a whole agency or a whole entity. For example, all police in America, 18,000 separate forces at least, and of course all Jewish people or the state of Israel. For everything, even if there are legitimate particular issues that need to be discussed, examined, and brought to justice. There's a blanket statement. So the BDS movement is now fueling the fire with Black Lives Matter, furthering the divide between police officers in their own communities who do need to heal. It seems that a lot of police officer or agencies in America are working with Israeli police and IDF consultants to learn counterterrorism mechanisms with which to secure the community, as well as response mechanisms. This is a very good thing since the Israelis have firsthand knowledge, decades worth, and have, if anybody in the world has, perfected some nature of prevention and response in order to keep civilized life moving forward. Now, the Palestinian Students for Justice in Palestine and the BDS activists are now infusing the Black Lives Matter groups with the propaganda that because the IDF and police forces in Israel are training American security forces, they are actually instructing them and teaching them to hunt down and murder young black men, just like they hunt down and murder Palestinian youth and young men. Never mind the fact that with every apprehension or death of a Palestinian that has been in the news, there is a full investigation, and nearly all of them are proven to be justified because the Palestinian victim, as it were, was in the middle of perpetrating a crime. Now, perhaps that is not the same rate as what goes on in America, but indeed there is no instruction or connection between the law enforcement measure for domestic criminal activity versus what the IDF and police forces from Israel come to train our police officers with in America regarding counterterrorism as well as response. Interestingly enough, the Black Lives Matter movement met with the mayor of Atlanta, an African-American man named Kasim Reed. They met with him for 2 hours, making a demand of him to cut off all future training of the Atlanta Police Department with Israeli representatives and consultants. His response was public, definitive, and undeniable. And I quote, "There was a demand that I stop allowing the Atlanta Police Department to train with the Israeli Police Department. I'm not going to do that. I happen to believe that the Israeli Police Department has some of the best counterterrorism techniques in the world, and it benefits our police department from this long-lasting relationship. I reported last year that the BDS movement tends to hijack all sorts of human rights protests and interests that happen on college campuses and in cities around this nation. Last year in New York, there was a feminist rally, and they brought to bear signs about divesting from Israel, the apartheid nation, which was pretty interesting at a feminist rally, considering Israel is the only place in the Middle East where women have as much rights as they do, equal rights in fact, and are not oppressed, wherein all the neighbors of the Middle East, of course, are. The BDS will take any opportunity to hijack a cause and somehow twist it and alter it, and with propaganda try to make it seem like it's Israel's fault or Jewish people's fault. And that is blatant anti-Semitism. I applaud the mayor of Atlanta, Mayor Reed, for recognizing this huge fallacious connection and denouncing it. After he gave the Black Lives Matter group their due time to meet with him, he discerned their information and realized it was false and unreasonable. Therefore, he would not answer their demand. This is good news. Shavua Tov, have a great week, and Shabbat Shalom.